Hi, everybody. Welcome to Last Week in Local for the week ending September 16th. It's Local U Advanced Denver Week, Mary. Yay!
It is.
Crocus win. Thanks for joining us. It's Mary and I today, and she's going to kick it off. Go for it, Mary.
All right. Over at Joy's forum, I think Joy noted that the Google My Business guidelines for practitioners has been updated. And what they did is added a sentence talking about salespeople and lead gen people are not eligible for practitioner listings. This thing with practitioners has been confusing since day one. We have never really been clearly told by Google what constitutes a legitimate practitioner, and it seems to vary widely from year to year even.
Right.
And I think it's still very vague and open to interpretation after this update. I mean, Carrie and I were talking about this in the pre-talk, and, am I allowed to have a listing as an SEO practitioner? But guess what? I also do sales and lead generation for my company. So does that make me ineligible? I mean, with the practitioner thing, it's never been clear. And the vagueness is just so disrespectful of everybody who has to deal with it.
I think so. And I think it's always been a bit elitist. So I dealt a little while ago kind of fighting with them a little bit over a tattoo artist who worked inside of a tattoo shop. And they're definitely a practitioner, like a hairdresser would be the same, right? They work inside of a salon. A lot of times they are a separate entity that rents space inside that salon. Should they be eligible for their own listing? What's the difference between them as a practitioner of a profession, as a tattoo artist or a hairstylist, or a lawyer or a doctor? Is it because you go to school for 6 years? Do you automatically become eligible for a practitioner listing? But if you don't, you don't get one. Like, there's this very elitist tint to the whole thing. And I don't think that they help themselves out at all by releasing updates to their guidelines, because nobody can interpret what the hell they're talking about. I think a lot of times all they do is make people ask a bunch of questions that they never answer, or they say things like, you get tweets from John Mueller or Danny Sullivan that say, well, I think you should go back and read it again, which means whatever you interpreted is wrong, but we're not going to correct you. Like, the vague booking drives me crazy. That I just can't handle that. Just say what you mean.
And as I understood it, back in the day when they first came out with practitioner listings, the idea was that in certain professions like law or dentistry or doctors, that the practitioners have their own practice. They have their own book of clients that follow them everywhere.
Right.
And therefore, they should own their profiles and be able to take their profiles with them. And I agree. I see no difference between the lady that cuts my hair, who I've been to 3 different salons over the last few years, and a dentist who might switch offices.
Right. Absolutely. And I think even more so, like a tattoo artist or a hairdresser keeps that book of business. They're much better about cultivating and keeping a book of business, it seems to me, than a doctor or a dentist. I've only had one instance where my doctor switched clinics, and she said to me, I'm switching clinics. I want you to know where I'll be, because this clinic will not tell you, kind of thing. That's the only time that's ever happened. I think that people tend to shop doctors and they stick with clinics more than they stick with individual doctors in many cases, a lot of times because of insurance reasons. But I think even more so now, like a hairdresser or a tattoo artist has a more cultivated personal book than a doctor or a dentist or maybe even a lawyer would have,
Yeah. I mean, my recommendation is that if you or your clients think that you're entitled to a practitioner listing, go ahead and try to get one verified and see what happens.
Yeah, it's worth a try, I think.
Yeah. Then Noah Lerner at Bike Shop SEO he has a nice suite of tools that he's developed, specifically for bike shops. A lot of them are, and a lot of them are free, but he's been tweeting recently that he's developing a way to manage Q&A through the API, a tool that's going to help you do that. And he actually has a YouTube video out on how to use it. So this is something I think is pretty exciting. As Carrie mentioned, this is available through platforms, but neither she nor I know of any standalone tool or service that will do this. And Noah seems to be putting one together for us. Thank you, Noah.
Thank you.
And then Unbounce and CallRail did a case study together. And it explains how to track calls like clicks and why that's important and how you can do it. And, not to give away the punchline, but it's by using dynamic numbers on landing pages. And they give you a very clear idea of how you can do this. And it increased their clients' leads by 219%. And I think that the lesson with this is that phone calls are really what count for local businesses. And local businesses know that. And local SEO practitioners know that. And we should all be using call tracking.
For sure.
Over to you, Carrie.
So I'm going to go back and nag on the Google webmaster people a bit. They released an update or a blog post or whatever they want to call it this morning, talking about making review-rich results more helpful. And the impetus or the what's behind this is they're saying now that a company A is not allowed to solicit and put reviews on their own company A website with markup on them and be eligible for stars. I think this sounds nuts to me. I don't understand why you would not be able to solicit and mark up your own reviews, even if you're using a third-party platform like GatherUp. Like if we're saying, hey, leave us a review, and they leave a review and it comes into our website via a widget, they're saying those aren't eligible. But then they go on to say they're not eligible for schema types for local business and organization. So does that mean only if you mark up with local business and organization can you? It doesn't make any sense. And
it
people
doesn't
are like
really make any sense.
screaming for clarification. And of course, it's radio silence on Google's side. They won't say anything. And then when they do chime in, it will probably yet again be, I think you should go back and read the blog post again, because obviously we haven't picked it apart with a fine tooth comb trying to figure out what the hell they're talking about already, right? Like, I
know. And it's so disruptive when everybody's going along following what they think are Google's rules, getting their stars in the SERPs, and then all of a sudden overnight the whole game changes.
And could they pick a better week to do this? I mean, we're really busy in local this week. We're on Local U Advanced. Could you have waited a week? Or done it last week? Like, come on, people. So I'm sure they don't care, but I care. So I think that's just another example of them updating something or putting a post out where nobody understands what the hell they're talking about. They also released something last week about new like no follow or do follow types. Like instead of just no follow links, there's now UGC links, user generated content links, and sponsored links, and you can tag things differently. But then they say, but this is all voluntary. You don't need to use this. But we spent hundreds of hours on it. And why?
Yeah. And they say that they can identify sponsored links. And, why shouldn't we be linking to user-generated content? I mean, that is another, it's like, was this just somebody's project? And here you go.
Well, and, I've said before, I think that their priorities from the top down need to be rearranged, because my dog is losing his gourd over here. There's a bunch of opportunity there, but their priorities are nuts. Like the maps need to be cleaned up, but they're not doing anything about it. But they do this, like this voluntary thing. I don't get it. And they
Yeah.
insist it's going to have an impact on real users. And I'm like, how is this going to, like, how? If you say this isn't a ranking signal, how does this? I don't get it. I don't get it. Anyway, just more examples of Google just confusing us more and not solving any problems at this point, I don't think. So there's that. I sat down and did a deep dive with Brandon Smith of YDOP, and we talked about all things Q&A. It was super fun to record that and kind of talk about the different opportunities there are on-site and off-site with, writing and repurposing your question and answer content, not just FAQ pages and Q&A in Google My Business. There's a lot of different opportunities. Nikki over at Sterling Sky wrote this really great article about how to troubleshoot when your GMB data keeps changing. Like when your I'm running into this right now, when your tracking codes keep getting stripped out of your website links, or when your hours keep changing. And it's not always like somebody doing it. You might be connected to a third-party app that you don't realize you're connected to, or it might just be an edit from somebody on the web or like a competitor trying to screw with your open hours and stuff like that. So it kind of goes through how to troubleshoot and figure out what edits are legit and how you can limit those weird apps from editing things for you. So it's definitely a good one to pick through. I'll be digging through it, trying to figure out what's up with my tracking codes this week.
I know one thing that amazes me about those changes is sometimes I'll go into a listings back end and there'll be a thing that there's been changes, but they don't really tell you what changes were made. And I have to go look at an old copy or an old screenshot of the local knowledge panel.
Right.
Because, this isn't my business. I'm not there every day. I can't just look at it and say, oh, yeah, I know the open and close hours for every business I work for.
Right.
To me, it's just crazy that they make changes. They tell you they made changes, but they don't tell you what the changes were.
That especially happens when it's like submitted from the web. Anybody can edit, like submit these hours instead of these hours. As long as you have a Google account, you can submit that. And so, but they don't tell you who submitted it and when and why or anything like that. It's like, okay. So I think that there's definitely a lot of use for this article as far as just being able to narrow down and figure out why things disappear or why things change so much. And then Mike wrote an interesting article over at GatherUp that talks about when a review is more than a review. And he goes through thoughts and ideas around analyzing reviews and helps kind of explain that there's many benefits beyond just a peer leaving feedback for that business. And he talks about the sentiment analysis tool that's inside the GatherUp tool, which I think is very interesting. There's a lot I think you can learn about a business by looking at that. So I think that there's it's something I'm going to kind of dig into a little bit more, but I thought it was an interesting article for sure.
Yeah, and can you use that to look at the sentiment that other businesses have, or just for your own business?
I think it's only for the reviews that your reviews and third-party reviews that are kind of pulled into the GatherUp infrastructure. I don't think you can get competitor information in there. I don't think so. That's a good question, though.
But, you can get competitor information just by reading their reviews. And I think that this is a really easy tactic that a lot of people fail to take advantage of. See what people are complaining about with your competitors, and then in your title text, on your content, in your ads, assure them that you are not late for every appointment.
Right. And you could use other tools for sentiment analysis of your competitors. Like you could just copy their last 2 months worth of reviews, paste it into either a word cloud tool of some sort, or just
Oh,
like a
that's a good idea.
document, and do searches for words and see how many times they're mentioned. I mean, there's things you could do outside of a tool that you could do sentiment analysis for a competitor. That's a good idea. I'm adding that to my audit checklist, Mary.
Okay.
Let me make a note. Then you had tweeted out, or actually I think you might have sent something to me, and then we tweeted about it a little bit, about getting prompts to leave ratings for businesses in the Google Maps app that you have only just visited their website or looked at their listing. Like you haven't even gone to the business and you're being prompted to leave a rating, right?
Haven't even driven by the business. The business is in a state you haven't been to for 10 years.
Right.
Yeah, and Google's asking you for your opinion. It's like, what the heck are they asking for?
Right.
And don't we have enough review spam out there that they should stop asking people for more review spam?
Right. This article was from the Android Police, and it talks about how it's available in the latest beta version of Google Maps, and it's a beta feature. I can't imagine that it's going to stay like that, where they're asking you to give feedback on a business you haven't visited, especially as it's part of the Maps app. So if they're tracking your location and they know you've been there and been into the business, I can see them asking for feedback or a rating, right? Because they know you've been there. But for businesses where you've never been or haven't been in years, like that seems way, that they need to dial that back.
Something's wrong with that whole
with
system
that beta.
there.
Yeah. I think that just sounds so strange to me. So, and then Bright Local announced at Brighton SEO last week, they released a new tool called Rank Flux, which is sort of like algorithm weather report for the local algorithm. Moz has the weather forecast tool, which is sort of for that SEO algorithm as a whole. And this one seems to be more focused on local results in the local algorithm. And you can also look at things by category. So for lawyers or for doctors or plumbing, HVAC and plumbing services. So that it's very interesting tool as far as how active is the algorithm right now? Are they making lots of changes, or has it been pretty quiet for a while? I can see benefit to it for sure, just from a, maybe a troubleshooting standpoint, maybe things are tanking or growing and you're like, what's going on? Like what? And you can see, oh, they're playing with the algorithm because this tool is telling me that there's more activity or something. But again, it's just a report. It doesn't like say, do this, do this, do this. I can see benefit to it. Like we were saying in the pre-talk, I tend to look at those things a few days after the algorithm activity, because who knows when it's actually done until it's done. And I don't want to draw any conclusions until I see the result, right? So
and see if it sticks.
Yeah, and see if it sticks around, because we all know that rankings fluctuate sometimes by 50, 100 places one day to the next. I mean, I see it happen all the time in the Bright Local keyword tracking tool, where you see today I lost 98 places and tomorrow I gained 98 places. Like it's a wash, right? But today was a bad day kind of thing. So I don't even really watch it that closely. I just think it's interesting that they can now measure how active even just the local algorithm is. So it'd be interesting to kind of watch it evolve and see what it shows over a period of time, how active the algorithm is.
Yeah, it could be very handy.
Yeah. And the last thing I have is just to remind people, Local U Advances this week. It's on Thursday at the University of Denver. We have 4 spots left, and we still have those tickets available on the website. So if you want to come, it's going to be lots of fun. And we're going to start it, kick it off with networking on Wednesday night, which is free for all badge holders. So we'll get you checked in, get you your badge, and come hang out with us and talk local SEO. That's all I have.
All right. See you in Denver.
We'll see everybody. Hopefully we'll see everybody in Denver. Thanks for joining us for Last Week in Local this week, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.